who do a lot of the tracking execution part. Product managers typically look at execution from one single view of making sure developers and designers and QA and everybody else are unblocked. They should not never be blocked, right? That's the biggest thing. And then typically most large companies have their own what we call rings and dog fooding. So what you all get um, as features like once in a year or once in 2 years have probably been used by folks within Microsoft, employees of Microsoft since the last 6 months. So we basically go through using these. It's a very old American slang term, which basically says eat your own dog food. So we basically go ahead and basically make sure that we use it first, get all the bugs, fix all the bugs, make sure the experience is perfect before it even goes to the test rings. The test rings would probably be 10% of worldwide audience, 50% of worldwide audience, and then finally 100%, right? That's how we ship most stuff these days. 10 years ago, that was not the case. You would release a CD every 3 years, but these days it's mostly worldwide deployment, and then you ship. When I say ship is typically 100% worldwide. And a term that is usually associated with this is general availability. This is called GA. So you will hear these a lot saying, like, when are you going to GA this feature, right? Documentation is ultra important. We basically make sure everything is done in documentation, and this will basically make sure um, your tribal knowledge doesn't get stayed in somebody's head, right? It goes into a document. Um, and then you monitor and optimize. You see what people are doing. Are they using it the right way that you're using it? As product managers, you would be forming certain hypotheses, right? A certain flow is how you have designed it, and you want that's a hypothesis based on talking to some users, based on what you think is the best thing. But then you basically got to make sure are the real users using it the right way that they're using? Are your features discoverable? Are people even finding the way to go and do a certain task? Right? And then you rinse and repeat. You go setting objectives again, feature prioritization, it goes on and on. Right? Now that it's time for going and optimizing. So this is the typical way. So you run a large company, we spoke about the landscape, and then we spoke about what the advantages, talk about the disadvantages, then we spoke about the cycle in which we go and develop products. How do we optimize? So there are certain things that I would want to go through quickly to just get you to figure out how to do this in the most optimal way possible. The best way to do this is understand the current state deeply, very deeply. For some of you folks who are doing thesis and research, this probably applies to you as well, right? Before you go and innovate and move forward, basically understand your current state as deeply as possible. Befriend folks who've been there for a long time, get your tribal knowledge, do your literature survey, get everything done, right? Then you basically go and figure out your users. Who are the users? What are the cohorts? How often do they use your product? What are the behaviors that people are doing right now? Are your users being used by young people, middle-aged people, older people? Which geography are they using it? This is something that's going to be used in the Middle East. This is mostly in Southeast Asia. All of these things, are very important. And finally, make marketing and sales your best friends because these are the folks who are on the ground. They are the first ones to hear a requirement. They are the first ones who hear competition's success. They are the first one to hear irritation, all of that good stuff. Master your feedback methods. In every company, there would be feedback methods that are available, ways by which users give feedback back to the company, um, either through diagnostic methods or by writing to them, app store feedback, uh, all the ways, right? And then you get your dashboards done to analyze that. Every week, every month, you go through how your product is performing and how the feedback is, all right? Internal docs, I keep saying internal docs are way more powerful than external docs. They tell the real story. In the current scenario, and especially in geographies like ours, uh, developers and others, even product managers, may come and may go. I mean, they after 3, 4 years, 5 years, they find a better opportunity, move on. It's capitalism at the end of the day. So what happens to all of the things that they have in their head? They need to document it, right? Like as product managers, we basically make sure we get all of that stuff documented. Communicate a lot. For all of you folks who eventually want to become product managers, um, this is probably the biggest thing that I would say that you should practice and get yourself up and running. Communicate a lot. Clarity, being concise, and being consistent is probably the most important three things that you've got to focus on. You need to, in any communication, uh, a talk like this, or an email, or a deck, needs to be clear in what's in it for the other person. If not, they have already tuned out, zoned out in the second slide or the 2 minutes of your conversation. You need to make sure whether something is required or optional. So if you see remember the three C's: clarity, concise, and consistent. If you hit all three, you basically have communicated effectively. This is the second most important thing. First is communication. Second is stakeholder management. Master the art of relationships. Make sure why you form that relationship. What's in it for them? What's in it for you? Consistent communication. Some folks actually have veto power, and some folks do not even realize that they have veto power. That's the power of understanding your stakeholder. Understand the difference between dependencies and blockers. Blockers hit the brakes on something. Dependencies are planning for a blocker much in advance and making sure you don't have a problem. Everyone has their iteration plans. You've got to basically align in such a way that your iteration plan is as important as their iteration plans, right? Your team is probably the thing that's going to make you succeed. You've got to go at it together. And in larger companies, typically we measure in terms of trides, dev, designer, PM. The three of you basically get things out. You need to have that open radical candor. It's a success or a failure as a team. How to set your expectations early. It's very important to form that close, inclusive bond between folks because you literally are shipping something out together. If at any point in time you figure out designer is drawing a design, throwing it across the wall to a developer, who's coding it up, throwing it across the wall to a QA, your team's all wrong, right? Definitely not in large, effective companies. Finally, the key takeaways that I've been rambling on for the last 40 minutes or so. You got to understand your current state. You need to know your users. Feedback is probably the most important thing to make sure that you move forward appropriately. Generate your internal docs so that there is no information that is lost using tribal knowledge. Communicate a lot. Know your stakeholders, manage your stakeholders, succeed through your stakeholders. And your team is what will get you successful. That's probably the essence of what I spoke to you about. I tried giving a lot of examples until now, but what I want to do is when we open up for question, you can ask me any question you want, but then it would be helpful if you can ask me questions like, can you give me an example of a situation where kind of solution? Because that's probably where I see there will be most value that I can add because everything else that I spoke to would probably be, barring the examples, would probably be there in books and YouTube and all that stuff. Go ahead, Utkarsh. How do you want to do questions? Are people going to raise hands or put it into the
Yeah.
chat? How do we do this?
If you're having any doubts related to session or any question, please just write in the chat. We'll just take those questions. We're waiting for some questions. Okay, this is a question
Yes.
from Aditya. Yeah.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate more on the types of feedback methods, or you can give any examples related to it?
Sure. No, this is good. This is good. Um, Feedback methods. So we were recently building a product called Microsoft Places. It's in public preview right now. Which, when you say public preview, it essentially means it goes out only to a small subset of users who have signed up for the product. Um, Given the fact that we had not taken it to general availability yet, um, feedback methods were incredibly important, right? So the way we did this was we actually interjected multiple points of ask us a question, or like I need help, or multiple places in the product where the users would actually go click a button and it would open up a sidebar which basically says, are you having a problem, are you having an enhancement request, please tell us more. And then a text box where they can actually go and write down stuff and then submit. So these are one of the ways by which we collect feedback methods. There are other ways of feedback methods where we actually go and have analytics. We do what we call funnel analysis. So number of people who come to your first screen. Let's take the example of, let's say, number of people who want to. Let's do the current latest thing, right? Like the Copilot. So Word actually has a Copilot where it can help you write documents and so on. So the funnel over there would be the number of people who came in and opened Word is the bigger universe. And then the number of people to whom we went and showed them a prompt, which basically says, click here to actually write a prompt, was the second set. We went and we go and see how many people went and clicked there. And the number of people who clicked that, the number of people who actually wrote down, let's say, summarize something or create a document, something, or any of those, we actually go and measure that. That's the third funnel. And then the last funnel would actually be, part of the funnel would be we actually went and did the action. And then there is a thumbs up, thumbs down at the end of it. And we basically go and capture that. So the number of people who went and did a thumbs up versus thumbs down would be we would go and say 100% of the people came in, 70% clicked on the prompt, 50% went and wrote something, 30% liked what we did. And then we basically do that feedback method again to say, how do we get more people to click on this? How do we get better quality results so that more people will click the thumbs up? That's kind of the way by which we do, feedback methods.
I think Aditya question is satisfied. Okay, the next we have from Sheesh. I know it would be a part of a session. Can you guide us how to approach your company as an intern? I think it's
So
for
I
product
think this is
management.
something, yeah. For even for a PM, this is I think the way we do even PM internships are through the university relations team. So I think you should probably reach out to the university. There is a team called University Relations. I believe these are also the folks who reach out to Placecom during things. So you should probably approach them. And there is a process. It happens through the process.
Okay, next question we have from Sanvi Jain. What are the things you look for in a candidate while hiring for product management?
So very wide question, right? So it
Yeah.
depends on the level at which we hire for. But assuming that you're looking for a fresher, given you folks are all still in college, the way there are a couple of things that we look for, right? We look for clarity of thought, we look for structured thinking, we look for communication skills, we look for analytical ability to crunch that down to a problem solving situation. There are various ways by which we measure this, and you'll see that in the group discussion round. Sometimes like different kinds of questions, but basically net, how do you generate clarity out of an ambiguous situation? How do you approach structured thinking? How do you communicate that well? These are some of the things that we look for.
Okay, so next question we have from Sarah. How would you start planning for a new feature? Can you share one of your experiences?
Sure. Again, multiple. The funnel comes in from multiple areas. Sometimes a feature would come in because competition has it. Sometimes it would be a whole bunch of our users telling us that, hey, we need this because that is a hole that is there using the feedback methods. Sometimes it would be an incident that occurred in the wild where we figured out, you know what, if that shouldn't happen again, we should have this feature. So we'll go and fill that feature so that people don't go into that situation of an incident. So there are various ways. There are user forums out there where people can go, and there's a communities over there where people can go and ask for features. The communities actually have upwards, downwards kind of thing, just like Product Hunt. Every 6 months, we basically take that feedback in as well. Sort of various avenues by which we get new features.
Okay, so next question we have from Gokulnath. What's something like a winning product for you? Like, what are the steps that need to be done for a winning product?
Again, a very large, wide question here. The definition of winning is probably itself will take a long time to understand, right? Basically, when you are coming up from, and it's, in a large company, a new product is very rare. It does happen, but very rare. Typically, it would be a winning feature in a larger product that you already have. And then even there, even before we start coding up, when we write the spec, we have to define, product managers have to define what is success for this feature. And then only we even get down to what the feature is, what is the impact that it will have, and then basically go and get developers to actually work on it. So it's too wide a question to answer what a winning
Yeah.
feature would be, but it depends for each feature. But one thing is sure, I like your question only for one thing. We just don't go develop features. You have to have a reason as to what will make it a winning feature before you even go and start developing it. That's something that we do for sure.
Okay, we have a question from Chirag. How would a product manager analyze the competition? Can you give some examples?
Sure. This is something that we do on a very, very regular basis, um, especially in current ages. We every time we write, there are two ways by which we do competition research. One is when we go and start doing a feature or a feature gap. During a feature gap analysis, we go and see what competition does and whether they already have it and whether they need to do it. Uh, Typically it's very hard to go get hold of the competition's product inside the company, but then like we would have personal accounts to go and try it out and all of that stuff. But there is almost always user research, user reviews. You can go talk to users who use your competition products to get how their experience is and all of that stuff. That's easily doable. Um, and in general, I think when you look at more and more these days, I'll give you an example of some of the Copilot and ChatGPT and Bard and the latest things that are happening. Most of these competition itself makes things easier by actually creating standards and then doing analysis and actually making sure there are models that are evaluated to basically make sure and scales and levels by which we can publicize on which one is better, what capability, and all of that stuff.
Okay, so we have a question from Abhi that your product has been shipped, but a major bug is there in the product itself. So how do you deal with such a situation?
Excellent question. Happens a lot. No, sorry, no, it doesn't happen a lot, but does happen on and off. If your processes are taken care of, major bugs would probably not be there. Okay, that's one. The second thing that we almost always develop is given that we have customers from large financial institutions and other large companies where like they run mission critical software on our platforms. um, we almost always have a way by which we can turn off a certain feature for a certain tenant if need be, and then we would basically just go and fix it and then go and release a patch, and then that patch would actually fix it. The good thing, however, these days is we don't need to ship a CD again, right? Like, so you can basically, so as much as your iPhones get updated, behind the scenes, your Word and Microsoft 365 and all of that also get updated. Finally, a lot of heavy duty functionality is anyway running on the cloud. So patching that problem on the cloud will most likely even be transparent that you won't even be able to see it.
Okay. Next question we have from Sanvi Jain. With vast pools of information, what would be your advice while screening companies and products? What should one try to approach while seeing through a manager's lens? Quite a complicated question.
I know I'm trying to grok that in the first place. How should one try to approach a dismantled product to analyze? I see. Um, very simple advice. Pick something that resonates with you, pick something that you like, pick something in your area that excites you. I think that's when you will do your really cool dismantling and analysis and all of that stuff. If I'm assuming this is primarily for your own practice, and if that is the case, um, pick something in the area that you are very excited about, because then you will actually go and do things better on your own.
Also, there's a question from Aryan. Is there any language barrier you face while you travel to different countries? Say you
No,
went to
I
China.
didn't necessarily. Yeah, I didn't go to China, but I've had Chinese. Like, we have a China office, we have a Suzhou office. Um, no, I mean, I think there's no usual language problems. Typically, most of these people are fluent in English. Um, it takes a bit of a challenge to understand the heavy accent, but then if you look at it that way, the US folks are probably having the same challenge to understand our accent in the first place. So I think the whole thing of inclusion and diversity, making sure that you take your effort to basically go and understand that makes a lot of difference. Second thing is, as much as possible, we try and do a document driven, writing driven process, in which case, basically, you know, ChatGPT and Copilot will fix all grammatical errors and you'll have a beautiful document anyway.
Okay, so we come to the last question of our session from Balaram. If there are multiple feature requests from the users, how would you evaluate which feature is actually the most useful and you are going to work on it, basically?
That's a good point. There are various frameworks that are available outside. Sometimes we use a framework, sometimes we just develop our own. But essentially, there are two or three things that we need to make sure that we capture. Right. One is, what's the impact that I mean, for every of those features, we basically put a tabular column and we basically say what's the impact, either in terms of revenue, in terms of stability, in terms of any other thing that you're measuring. You basically go and put it for all the features. Then you basically go and say, like, how urgent is this feature required at this moment in time? Immediate, near term, mid-term, long term. And then you basically go and put the amount of effort that is required, number of people that will be required, number of developers that will require, then finally how long it will take to go and do this. So if there's some form of a weightage factor that you put in all of these, you basically go and figure out which one is most important. Sometimes some of these things will have a very high weightage factor. If it says it is a security enhancement that needs to be done now, you basically trumps everything else. And then, like, within the remaining, you basically go and stack rank and then do it. But yeah, I mean, this is something that product managers do on a very regular basis. Stack ranking based on impact, complexity, time it will take to do it, resources that will take to do it. There's also a framework called RICE framework. Just go Google it and you'll figure out some stuff. Yeah.
Okay, Anu, I think your question was satisfied. So now we come to the end of the session. Thanks a lot, sir, for sharing your insights and experiences. Your journey is super inspiring, and we appreciate the valuable knowledge you have shared. Big thanks to our audience for being so active and engaged. Just a quick reminder, the assignment for week 1 is active and the submission date is 28 June. Also, the week 2 content of Product Matters 4.0 will be live from tomorrow. Make sure to check it out. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Thanks, Utkarsh, for hosting. Bye bye.
Sure.